When we think of college life in the 1960s and 70s, many popular images come to mind, such as feminists setting fire to their bras, young men setting fire to their draft cards, hippies setting fire to their recreational items. You get the idea. So we think of this era as a time of free love, draft protests, and draft evasions, but many of these stereotypes may be just that. My area of research focuses on campus life in the 60s and 70s, and what I found is that while these images are exciting, scandalous, and fiery, they may generate more heat than light. Let's take, for example, some of the myths surrounding the sexual revolution, particularly the story of feminists setting fire to their undergarments. That story was spread from a headline about the 1968 Miss America pageant. Testimonies from witnesses that day revealed that the protests were very peaceful, nothing was set on fire, and everyone kept their clothes on. The author that wrote that article was attempting to tie feminist protesters to draft protesters who were actually burning their draft cards. But that one story spread like fire, and even though it was false, it painted the stereotype of the sexual revolution in general, and feminists specifically, for decades to come. In addition to ushering in the second wave of feminism to campus, the sexual revolution also brought about the promise of free love. The aim of the revolution was to expose this hypocrisy of the idea that young men and women might remain abstinent before marriage, because Alfred Kinsey's famous sexuality studies from the 40s and 50s, a generation before, showed that young men and women were engaged in premarital sex. They just weren't talking about it because it wasn't socially acceptable. So the aim of the revolution then was to expose the hypocrisy of this idea, to free young men and women from secrecy and shame surrounding premarital sex. But in practice, it didn't mean that all students actively participated. Data also revealed that administrators were deeply concerned of an increase in sexual activity after the 1960s and the introduction of the birth control pill. Administrators, embracing the in loco parentis attitude, adopted policies that were very strict, that limited students' autonomy, and aimed to stomp out waves of the revolution where it occurred on campus. For example, one would be hard-pressed to find a university doctor that was willing to write a prescription for birth control pills, and that's not just a university phenomenon, but across the nation. Early studies reported that up to 96% of doctors wouldn't write prescriptives for contraceptives if their patients weren't married. In an age before FERPA and medical privacy laws, you can imagine that it's probably very difficult for a revolution to take hold in that climate. So my research challenges this narrative that the 1960s and 70s were the sexual free-for-all portrayed in popular media in movies like Animal House. There were no bra burners, but there were still drug users, draft evaders, and protesters of all sorts. But I aim to show that these stereotypes receive a disproportionate amount of attention, because the truth is there's not enough historical evidence to support it. And perpetuating these ideas still continues to generate more heat than light.